as wicked as they always were. Of course, in keeping with the family themes, even bad guys have mommies and daddies, apparently.
What do you think you're doing? That's my car you just destroyed.
Oh, well, excuse me. You probably did something crooked to get it anyway. Listen, Mr. Morgan, my father and little brother's bail money is riding on the success of this little scenario. If you try to...
Yep, the Nebraska family, also from episode 5, has more than 2 members. This is the mother, daughter, and 3 more sons, hired by Morgan as a last resort, as they were in dire need of money themselves to bail their relations out of the slammer. And no, they don't specify if they plan to do it legally or not. Oh yeah, and don't ask me how these 2 procreated. I prefer to think Professor Nebraska just grew them all in test tubes. Back with the oldsters, the prodigal son Badwick tells his father that Morgan is going to try and kill them for the land, and that he's come to take the deed and save their skins. His father refuses, telling Badwick that Morgan doesn't plan to cultivate the plant, and forsaking the land will mean the destruction of the only bits of greenery on the planet. Badwick rages back that it isn't worth their lives, and then shouts something he regrets.
Damn you! Max was right. He chose to die instead of being raised by worthless parents.
This confuses a few people because we've never heard of this Max person and never will again. But I think it's safe to say that Max was the infant in the picture that we saw, who probably died at a young age, and whatever the circumstances were, they appear to be the catalyst that broke this family apart. Yay, Trigun being ambiguous again. But the nice thing about Trigun and being ambiguous is it almost always gives you just enough evidence to figure it out yourself. Just then, an explosion goes off outside. The assault of the Nebraska family has begun. Granny dons her best kitchenware to fight the invaders, and Grandpa follows suit, despite Badwick's pleading. Morgan offers the oldsters one last chance to name their price for the land.
Here is a new claim. A way out of this mess that is actually worth something. I'll fill in the amount right now. All you have to do is tell me how many zeros you want.
I think my answer's pretty clear. Now beat it.
I have no idea who it is, as in I did look up the name, and he hasn't really done much outside of this, but I love Morgan's voice. It's just so ridiculous and full of character. Oh yeah, real quick, when I mention voice actors in this series, for as many as I can be sure of in the main cast, there are dozens of minor roles that are unlisted and a complete mystery, including Elizabeth from episode 6, who I only recently discovered was Mona Marshall in a rare female role. Trigun's just old, and when anime was first gaining major popularity in the late 90s, they didn't make a big deal out of voice actors like they do now. The credits don't match names to actors, and most of the names are clearly made-up aliases, like it was the credits for the Angry Beavers or something. Sure, the acting wasn't as good most of the time, so it didn't matter, but Trigun's dub remains a glaring exception to that, so I like to try and figure out who some of these unlisted names are. So this is conjecture on my part, but I'm pretty sure William Knight, an older gentleman himself and a superb voice actor, plays the grandpa here, and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who needs no introduction, is playing Marilyn Nebraska. It's funny, because with her commanding voice, you never get to hear her play a bubbly airhead like this. Badwick takes it all in from inside the house with his mother and calls his dad a crazy old man.
Are you really that much of an idiot? He's doing it to save the land, me, and you. I can't believe you don't see that.
Huh? I'm afraid it's a little late for this lovey-dovey crap. Unless we give in, Ma, we're all gonna die here.
Morgan gives the go-ahead to kill off every man standing, and Millie jumps into the fray. As I mentioned in episode 11, Millie is just Millie, and she does the right thing without hesitation and without giving it much thought afterwards. Meryl, for her part, sides with Badwick and thinks the oldster should just give up the property and escape. But when she sees her partner risking her life for these strangers, she takes a stand as well.
Now that I've heard your gruesome plan, I'm afraid I can't let you off that easily. Make even the slightest twitch and I'll be all over you and your sick little band of thugs.
Oh, Meryl, I'm so glad you're here.
I would suggest that next time you think a little bit more before you act, Millie. You might live a lot longer.
Right.
Now that he sees Meryl risking her life for his parents, Badwick rushes over the drawing we saw earlier. Surprise, surprise, inside the frame is the deed to the land, sealed inside an envelope. He snatches it and runs out to Morgan, ignoring his mother's protests.
Huh? All right, Morgan, enough! I got the document! I got what you've been asking for!
Son, don't do it!
Well done. Huh?
Morgan realizes Badwick is riding to City Hall to deliver the deed himself, and commands Mrs. Nebraska to crush him like a Cro-Magnon beetle. Seriously, am I the only person who thinks Badwick is the ugliest creature in this series? She knows it's futile, but Meryl aims her derringer and tries to stop the plummeting human bomb.
That was really amazing, Meryl!
I did that?
That makes us even now for your help on the sand steamer.
Huh? Hey, is that all the time I get?
After Vash lampshades his tiny amount of screen time, Morgan tries to sick the remaining Nebraskas on Badwick, but Mommy is too depressed that her little boy was injured and collapses in a puddle of tears on top of Morgan. The remaining Rat Pack... Did they do anything in this episode besides hold rifles and make faces? Well, anyway, they decide to screw the whole embarrassing display and go home. The old couple thanks the insurance girls for all their help, and Grandpa gives Meryl, who was particularly brave considering she disagreed with the oldsters, some parting advice.
Walk your own path with your head held high. Your life is their life. The fact that you are who you are helps the people you love to live through you.
Now, in the manga, this advice was more applicable to Meryl's relationship with her actual parents and her growth as a person, as she was portrayed as a young pup deciding what she wanted to do with her life. But in the anime, that's a little bit more of Millie's role. Not that she's trying to decide who she wants to be, but she sees the world with wide-eyed innocence and has a lot yet to experience. Anime Meryl is successful in the field she's chosen, she's worldly wise, and she lives her life by the book, which is why Vash is so infuriating to her because there's no way to categorize or control him, which is supposed to be her job. The old man's advice to be proud of the choices you make and make them your own is therefore going to apply more to Meryl's relationship with her company than her parents, and that's the context we're going to see it called back to in the future. Meryl's head was telling her that these people were being foolish and there was no reason to risk her life for them because the situation was futile anyway. But her heart told her that, like Millie, the only good thing to do was to stand up for what was right anyway. She can't let her sense of protocol and the need for others' approval dominate her actions, and over time she won't. Of course, she still hasn't decided what she's really going to live her life for, but that will come eventually. Badwick, meanwhile, takes the deed to the main office, but the teller stops him with some pertinent information.
Hey, hold on a moment, sir. Huh? There seems to be one more claim transfer in the envelope. You need to look at it. The beneficiary, as written here, is Badwick. Isn't that you?
Yes, that's me.
I have to admit, despite Badwick's creepy dog face being the one brought to tears here, I found that pretty moving. After all, the old couple had plenty of other men they could have left the land to. We saw them defending the property alongside them. But they chose to leave it with their son, proving that they still had some faith in him after all, and I think this episode proves he'll take good care of that land in the end. The next morning, Meryl almost misses the bus out of Little Arcadia because she'd stayed up all night writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with that, we are finally done with filler, completely. Yay! Seriously, yay. I should say at this point that there's a reason for all this filler plaguing the first half of Trigun. It was actually a point of contention between the screenwriter and the director that almost led to a falling out at one point. The director, Nishimura, came up with the idea of delaying Vash's call to action and getting to know him and the girls as characters first, which I loved, but he also wanted to make Trigun more lighthearted on the whole, while the screenwriter, Yosuke Kuroda, was a big fan of the manga and originally planned for Legato to make his appearance in episode 8 or 10, and they got pushed back to 11. When Legato was pushed back further to episode 12, with a recap and a filler episode directly following him, Kuroda debated with the director heavily, insisting that the dark, tragic plot had to come into play soon, or it would be too jarring for the audience, while the director felt that the switch would drive the audience away, and they needed to ease into it as much as possible, and possibly downplay the tone entirely. So what results is a weird chimera of sorts, where the first half of Trigun is mostly comedy with some tender moments, and very well written and paced, but clearly not going anywhere. The second half after this filler episode is a mining car plummet to the innermost circle of hell for every character involved. Pretty rushed, but most of the drama still works really well, and the few instances of comedy pushed into those episodes feel uncomfortably forced. Explains a lot, I think. Either way, we're now left with 12 episodes remaining to cram all of the drama of the main story into, and it's going to be quite the wild ride.
You're naive. Had I been so inclined, I could have killed you at least 3 times by now.